Hi guys, how are you doing? This is Abimore1, aka Georgia Curry, aka Mrs. Curry, and I'm here with another video for my Let's Talk ELA segment. So I've decided that I am going to do some videos on one of my favorite courses of all time, AP Language and Composition. So, a little bit about me for those who don't know. I have been an educator for almost 3 decades, but this is only my 3rd year teaching AP Language and Composition, a course that I really love because of the exposure that it gives young people. I love having my students to talk and to respectfully share their perspective on various subjects. And this is one of the things that we typically do in an AP Language and Composition class, among other things. Anyhow, I want to start by giving a little review of this course, and then I'm going to talk about rhetorical analysis a little bit because that is going to be the main focus of my next video, which will be the first official video in this series. So, obviously, this is an advanced placement course, and I like to start by talking about the exam. Just give an overview of the exam because that is what students want to hear about. How can I qualify? Well, this is a very comprehensive course, and students are going to have to learn how to do 3 different kinds of essay: the rhetorical analysis essay, the synthesis essay, and an argument essay. There is also a multiple choice section that has 2 categories. One, there's a reading section, which I will get into over time, and then there's also a section that is based on writing. Now, let me start, like I said, with rhetorical analysis, which is also where I start in my actual classroom. So, rhetorical analysis essay writing is all about analyzing a speaker or a writer's speech or piece of writing for their use of rhetorical choices. What are they doing in order to convey a message? What are they doing in order to achieve a purpose? I love it because it requires that we first of all understand that a writer, a speaker, is being extremely intentional about what it is they are saying, because let's just be honest, they have a motive, all right? They have this message that they want to convey, or they have this purpose that they want to achieve. And so they have to consider what we call elements of the rhetorical situation. They have to consider their audience. They have to consider this subject that they're speaking about. They have to consider how they're going to impact this audience. This audience is not going to believe or agree with them just because they said so. They have to force them. They have to make them. And so the rhetorical appeals are going to come out. You know, Aristotle talked about the ethos and the pathos. Some people say pathos, and the logos. But even more important than that, like I tell my students, you're not going to be as impressive as you want to be if you are only talking about the rhetorical strategies or devices like imagery and those rhetorical appeals I just mentioned. If you're going to be talking about a writer's use of juxtaposition, or a writer asks a couple of rhetorical questions, that is not going to be as impressive as showing your knowledge using active verbs, because again, if you're analyzing for choices, then you want to really stick to what these people are doing. How are you going to say that without active verbs? And so we're not going to use, like I tell my students, mediocre terms like, oh, the writer uses repetition, the writer employs, or the writer utilizes. I tell my students, no, you are better than those weak unimpressive terms. We're going to use those active verbs. We're going to talk about the writer reminiscing. The writer illustrates. We're going to talk about how the writer recalls or the writer calls out. The writer highlights. The writer incorporates. We're going to use those active verbs to constantly show what this person is doing, what choices this person is making with that ulterior motive to convey that message or to achieve that purpose. What is the intended impact? This speaker or this writer knows that I have an objective that I'm trying to achieve. But this audience is not just going to be moved. This audience has their own preconceived notions about what I'm talking about. In order to move them, I am going to have to ensure that I strategically use my words, because I can't fight them. I can't beat them into agreeing with me. I am only going to be using my words. And so I have to now know, how am I going to impact them? And so that is one of the big things with rhetorical analysis. You consider again the elements of the rhetorical situation. And so this particular audience at this particular time, even because context and exigence, all of those we will flush out, are also important in this rhetorical situation. And so what is the impact that I want to have? What do I have to say in order to achieve that impact? So rhetorical analysis is all about analyzing those little moves that are sometimes so very subtle. How does the speaker begin the speech? After beginning in whatever manner, do they have a sudden switch, a sudden tonal change? How do they now go from one point to another and move the audience with them? And by the end of that presentation, by the end of that piece of writing, they have achieved their purpose. What do they do? What are the choices that they make? Now, this is a very corny story, but as long as I have at least one student who laughs when I share it, I will continue to share it. Even if the students are nervously laughing because they cannot believe Mrs. Curry is sharing this in her classroom. Anyhow, so whenever I'm going to teach anything concerning rhetoric, I always use this story, true story, about this particular young man. I started teaching him when he was a freshman. So, you know, at school, after our students come from lunch, Mrs. Curry does not really like for the students to come from lunch and ask immediately, may I use the restroom? Because we know that while we are there, during our lunch break, we have our lunch, we use the restroom, unless it's an emergency. Of course, I'm not that crazy. But unless it's an emergency, I don't want to send you out when our class was already interrupted. We don't want another interruption, so they know I prefer for them to use the restroom, you know, during their lunch break once they have had their lunch. Anyhow, so this wonderful young man, after class, he came to me ever so gently and he said, Mrs. Curry, I know, which is rhetoric in itself. He already started with rhetoric. He said, Mrs. Curry, I know how you feel about sending us back to the restroom when we've just come from lunch, but I really do have to go. Now, you have to know your students, and I knew that I was definitely sending this young man because I believed him. You know, he wasn't the type of student who would want to hide and go out to play around, because he loves the subject. He loved being in class. And so I believed him. But of course, I still was a little annoyed. And so I didn't say yes immediately. I did, you know, I was about to say, okay, I believe you, so go and come back. But he didn't even give me a chance to do that. He leaned in ever so closely, and he said, he touched my hand and he said, Mrs. Curry, it's diarrhea. And what do? The minute he says that, I say, go! because guess what? He has achieved his purpose by telling me, he didn't fight me, didn't hit me, didn't yell at me, but he used his words. And guess what? He accomplished his purpose. He got what he wanted, because by the time he finished telling me those few words, I'm like, get out of here, because I don't want an issue in this classroom. And I use that to show the students that, look, we use rhetoric all the time. Everything is an argument, right? We are always selling something because we want people to agree, or we want to convince them about this or about that. And so I tell the students, you try to use it on me. You use rhetoric on your parents all the time. You make rhetorical choices with each other. And so by the time we get started, they tend to come back and they tell me, oh my goodness, no, I read between the lines. No matter what somebody's saying, I'm digging behind their words, and that's awesome. That is how they're going to develop this skill. And so I am excited that I'm going to be adding this to my Let's Talk ELA segment of my channel, and I hope that you will enjoy it. It is meant to help my students and anybody who comes across my videos. So subscribe for more, and see you next time. God bless.